Hi, welcome to HIP, your home improvement podcast by Lima Kitchens. This podcast explores topics to do with home renovations, updates, and kitchen design. Hi, and welcome back to HIP Home Improvement Podcast. Today, I am joined with Kate, who is a professional organiser and also a previous client of ours. And if you've listened to previous episodes, she is the client who I stole the idea of the picture window from. You knew it. Yes.
I did. I thought that.
So, yeah, very creative individual, I would say as well. So, yeah, over to you, Kate, if you can just tell us a little bit about you and
Thanks, Elizabeth. That was a lovely welcome. My name's Kate and I'm the founder of Ace Your Space. I'm based in Milton Keynes and I'm a professional organiser and declutterer. And basically my aim is to help busy women feel the life-changing effects of living with less and making sure that they feel that calm and sense of peace in their homes and, you know, leave that kind of chaos behind. And then when they walk into their homes, it's like their sanctuary.
I think we all need that.
Yes, definitely. You know, life is busy. We haven't got time for anything excess in our lives, have we?
No, absolutely not. It's just there's always one thing after the other. It doesn't matter what it is you do. There's always something else that's demanding your time, I think.
Absolutely. And you want to be able to walk into your home and feel that relief at the end of the day. You know, I've had clients before that actually stay in their car because they don't want to go into their home, and that's so sad. And that's, you know, where I can make a difference and make people have that peace when they walk in.
That is really sad. I think, your home is supposed to be your sanctuary and your safe space. And
exactly.
Yeah, where you can just relax and be yourself and not have to worry about anything. So to feel you need to take 5 minutes before you need to go in, that's got to be tricky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Can you give us kind of some examples of what kind of things do you assess when you enter someone's home? Where do you kind of start that journey of helping them with that decluttering?
So it depends what the client wants me to do. So if they want me to help on a whole house transformation, which I would say is the majority of my work, is looking at the whole home, because as you know, every space impacts a different space. So I always start at the front door and I'm looking for problem areas. So I'm looking around to see, where there's cluttered shoes, if there's too many coats hanging up, where there's, corners of clutter. Why is there clutter there? What type of clutter is there? And then I'm looking around to see what storage they've already got, what seems to be working, what isn't. And most importantly, what's affecting the client the most, what is it that's bothering them the most on a day-to-day basis? And that tends to be where we start, because if they can feel that immediate, it makes a huge difference. And typically, I would say we tend to start in the master bedroom, because the moment you get that better sleep, then everything else feels easier. Because actually, we don't realise how much clutter impacts us from a mental health perspective, because even though you think you're not thinking about it, subconsciously it's all weighing on your shoulders. And probably the biggest bit of feedback I get is that kind of, I didn't realise how life-changing that would be, what that sense of relief that I'd obviously been carrying all this but not realising.
That's really interesting, definitely. Do you think it's interesting. So many things going on in my mind at the moment. Sorry, I just need to gain some order behind what I'm thinking. So, if you're starting with the master bedroom, are you considering kind of relocating things from that area to keep it more open, or are you introducing items to create more organisation? Or is it a combination?
Well, it's really bespoke to the client. So every person is different, every family is different. And I'm sure you find this when you're, doing the home improvements yourself. We have to really consider what they need their bedroom to function. And ultimately, the goal should be that you only really have bedroom stuff in your bedroom. But that's not always possible. Homes in the UK aren't the largest, as we know. And sometimes we have to accommodate other things, but we want to do it in a way that's purposeful, makes sense, and it isn't going to impact someone's sleep, because ultimately the bedroom is that sort of starting point where it's that calm sanctuary. So when you get home, when you go to bed, you want to feel calm. You don't want to be looking at clothes all over the floor because you haven't got space in your wardrobe, because actually there's loads of paperwork on the top shelf, and every time you open your wardrobe and you feel a bit sick because you're like, oh, I've just got nothing to wear. And actually half the time it's because you can't find what you need because the volumes become too much of a problem. So yes, a master bedroom is definitely somewhere where we would start, but I would also look in the kitchen, those big communal zones as well. But again, it just depends on the client. It depends what their goals are. And it's up to me as a professional organiser to make sure that I'm listening to the client, listening to what their challenges are, what their goals are, and then coming up with a plan that works for them and their family.
Okay. So you've got communal areas. What is it, the kitchen that you think tends to be the most problematic, or transition between spaces?
It does depend, but yes, the kitchen can be a real problem because it is the hub of the home. You get, kids coming with their homework, you get toys, a lot of my clients, and, I'm actually one of those clients that you might have a playroom, but lots of kids like playing with the family, especially if you've got open plan living. So the playroom becomes more of a toy storage space, shall we say, which is always fun. And so actually it's seeing what's working, what's not working. And certainly when we did our renovation, we did put a playroom in because we had the space to do that and it felt perfect. But at that point, I only had a little toddler and our new baby. We put the playroom in, very quickly realised that they didn't really play in it. So actually repurposed it to an office, which then just hit sort of around COVID time. So it was kind of the perfect opportunity to do that. So I think you do need to think about spaces being flexible and growing, with your family, because when you put in, as you will know as well, you design these spaces, but they do need to grow with your family.
I think it's really interesting that you've swapped the playroom from being a playroom to an office as well, which I think coincided with you starting up your own business as well. So really good for that, really good for COVID, but also as your children get older and are doing more studying, that gives them a space which then isn't cluttering up the bedroom and putting all of that stress and pressure and deadline on their sleeping.
Yes.
As well, really kind of helpful from a home point, but also that mental health situation as well.
Absolutely.
And being able to create that, this room is for this activity, this mindset, and this is what we need, which, I think definitely what I hadn't appreciated from inviting you on was the connection between organisation and mental health within the home. I think I could sit here and talk to you all day about this. So
yes. It is a very good subject.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I think the growing of families and the multi-generational living that's happening, in considering those changes and support that might need to happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Later on.
I think having purposeful spaces that can flex towards the changes of the family is probably, I think, more important than ever at the moment, because so much is changing. If you'd asked me, when you did our kitchen, if you'd said to me, in whatever 7 years you're going to be running your own business, I'd have laughed and I would never have planned for that. But I think it is just about knowing that you can make slight tweaks to get the space that you really want. But certainly the connection with mental health is so important, and I think a lot of people don't realise that. Often cluttering your homes is a reflection of what's going on in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially as a woman these days, we're still doing a lot, and we tend to hold all that sort of the mental load, which gets talked about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're holding all that mental load, even if you've got, like, my husband is amazing. He definitely does his fair share. We kind of do different jobs and it's kind of worked out how it is. But I remember when my daughter started secondary school, straight away we had to say to her, I had to say to him, that I need you to take on that school admin, because at the end of her primary school, with all the year 6 stuff coming in and my daughter being there as well, I was like, I can't do this. It's too much. And you could see it was too much because stuff was happening at home. It was becoming cluttered because I just couldn't deal with everything that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is very important to think about, how you're feeling, and it is your home. creating the environment that's helping you, keep calm and feel safe and all of those good things.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting as well, just completely off of home improvement, but good signs to help other people in your homes. If it's your significant other or even your children, is there something that's changing, being able to give you those kind of cues as to when you may need to intervene, when you may need to give them some space, and that support as well.
Absolutely.
So getting back onto
yes.
storage and organisation specifically, where would you say the most neglected areas of homes are?
So there's lots of neglected areas, but it's probably worth just thinking before you even get to areas of neglect, just some basic areas to start with is something that, and to be honest, all of these are often neglected as well. It's about decluttering. So before you even start doing your home improvement, you really need to declutter. I cannot stress enough, the outcome will be significantly better. Because how can you do a renovation when you don't actually know what stuff it is that you need and that works for you as a family? So an example of that is if you've got lots of excess kitchen items that you never use, you will end up casting it all around when you're doing the packing up for the new kitchen to come in. And let's be honest, that is one of the worst bits, and often where, as a professional organiser, we come in and help with. You'll be packing it all up, you'll then be unpacking it all, it will sit in the cupboards again, not being used, and you'll have paid for extra storage that you don't even need. And it's not even just the kitchen, it's all the storage that you're putting in across the renovation, whether,
tea towels, spare bedding that you're never going to use again.
Exactly. And, people spend quite a lot of money, getting really beautiful bespoke storage and housing clutter that you don't need. And I think the other thing is, a lot of people get storage units to house when they're doing a renovation. And actually you could save a lot of money with a much smaller storage unit if you're not housing all the clutter. So clutter costs you. Ultimately, mental health, it costs you time, and it costs you money. And in a renovation, that's exactly where I would say. So you definitely want to declutter first. Then secondly, think lifestyle before layout. So everyone gets really excited going, we're going to do this renovation. We're going to have an extension here. We're going to have doors out to the patio and we're going to do this. And it's all very aesthetic based. But actually, what routines do you have? Where do the kids drop the school bags that currently really annoys you?
Yes.
How are we going to solve those problems? Because actually your extension should be making a difference to your life, solving all of those problems.
Yeah. And this is something that we touched on previously, kind of the utility and brutality kind of thing that's happening. Are people coming in through the front door? Do they need kind of a little area where the kids can just throw the bag? Or is that, off of the driveway into that what would have previously been a utility room? Are they going to kick their shoes off there and the sports kits left there? Excuse me, and all of those kind of things. When you're spending that money, just denoting a small amount of space for that purpose rather than thinking it all needs to be open can make it really different. And it shows a lot of personality in those space we were talking about, because you have the sports, you have the lunch boxes, you have the school papers, the certificates, the artwork. That's a really intimate and very hard working space. So kind of doing those extensions and thinking about all of those areas that are just part of life are really important, I think.
Oh, absolutely. You want to be mapping your routines, working out what your normal flow is. And it can be like little things, like my daughter always puts her mascara on downstairs. And if we didn't have the right storage, that would just be clutter on the worktop. And that's just how she works. I'm not going to be able to persuade her to do it upstairs because her natural rhythm. So instead of trying to force people to do something that doesn't work for them, it's about incorporating those routines into the new space.
Yes.
So it's a really tiny example, but it's the same with paperwork. I'll come back to that more on a neglect point of view, because you touched on it before, which is really interesting. And then the final piece, which is really important, is the unpacking strategy. So strategy probably sounds a bit too fancy, but essentially you've been potentially not living in the house for a while. You have maybe been living in 2 rooms upstairs and you're just so excited that everything's in and you just want to get back in and you just shove everything back in the cupboards. And obviously, if you haven't decluttered first, then it's a nightmare anyway. But you want to know every single item that you own, pretty much what cupboard it's going in and why that storage is there.
Mm-hmm. I recently helped my in-laws downsize and move, and I wasn't involved with the packing or the unpacking, and they were adamant they were going to do it themselves. Just of the era, that's what they do. And I walked into their kitchen and they just emptied boxes and put it away. And I had to go out. I had to leave, just take a moment, because we had heavy pans above our head. They're never going to use these pans. I've managed to put them into a better location for them. You're probably not going to use these. Can we readdress this after Christmas when you realise you're not hosting Christmas dinner again? But yeah, just moving everything around. And it's harder to do it because in order for me to put this here, I need to empty this then, and then I need to move that there. And it just makes it, not only are you doing it, it feels like you're doing it 3 times rather than twice, because
absolutely,
you're just constantly moving stuff around, and then you get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that's just left because you haven't pre-planned.
Absolutely. And that's why the decluttering is really important. But certainly I had one client, this lovely lady, she'd had this beautiful new kitchen put in, not one of yours, but really lovely. And she said, I just don't love it. And I don't know why I'm not loving it, but it just feels disorganized. And I thought the kitchen was going to solve all my problems, but it was that final piece. It was the unpacking. So although the flow of the kitchen was perfect, when it came to the unpacking point, that flow then hadn't continued. So, by going in and then reorganizing, she was like, this is what I thought my kitchen was going to feel like. So it's about making sure that, yes, the kitchen company can do an amazing design and they can map all of your flows, but actually there is an element for you to make sure then it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And that must have been really lovely for you to being able to kind of just find that final jigsaw piece.
It is. It's just the final bit. And it's about investing that time, isn't it, up front, whether it's the planning, right through your build, right up until the end. And as well as time, investing the money on the right storage solutions, because I'm sure you see this all the time, particularly in kitchens where people have maybe scrimped on storage. And then when it comes to it, I've got to bring in other storage, which isn't as good. And then ultimately it costs them quite a bit anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So it's not necessarily quantity of storage. It's about the usage, the visibility, exactly, the accessibility. And yes, you might be able to buy something online or from the supermarket to add in, but it is still an additional cost that's being added in. And is it going to perform in the same way?
Yeah. And I think there are some cupboards that you can get away with that in and others that you can't. But I think it's really important. And I think sometimes it is worth holding fire on the new curtains or whatever and actually making sure that the bones are right and the functionality and accessibility is right, because the aesthetics can always come later.
Mm-hmm. One really interesting thing that I spoke about with Amanda on a previous episode was about how in the first kind of year or two, you love the aesthetic. That's the most important thing. People are coming into the space going, oh, it's gorgeous, it's so lovely, it's beautiful. But then when you're 5-6 years later, the aesthetic is what it is. You've probably chipped something, you've knocked a bit of paint or whatever it is you've done. And you're just not in love with it in the same way. But what you do notice for that subsequent 10, 15 years is how you can never find or access this item, or you don't know what you've got. And having all of those same frustrations, you all stood in the same corner doing the prep. That really needs to be put front and foremost of your planning.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's just so important.
Indeed. So I'm very conscious that I said I wouldn't keep you too long. So what I would really like to know is what the benefits you see of having someone come in and do it for you rather than undertaking it yourself. I've got some, I can theorize on what those benefits could be, but I'd love to hear it from yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I think a professional organiser, sometimes people think it's someone that just comes in to tidy up, but that is, obviously it will be tidy when we've finished, but that is not what we do. Our main goal is to create functional systems, decluttering and making functional systems so that your home works much harder for you and you can enjoy the space you're living in. And yes, it will look beautiful. I've got a design background, so even a garage when I've been there will look beautiful because that's what we do. But, like you were saying, the aesthetics is secondary. Everything has got to be functional. It's got to be accessible. And so right at the beginning of build, we can help with that declutter. So you can have me in, for a day and you actually probably only spend an hour and a half of time, whereas I'll be there for 7. So massive time saving. We'll be able to help sometimes with difficult decisions. So, we do coach people through all of that decision making because it gets hard. You're thinking going to have to let go of things is not easy for everybody. So that sort of, we can help up front. Also, the packing up of your kitchen, that is a very boring task. The packing up of cupboards, we can take all of the hideous tasks away from you, including, doing project planning, of your build in terms of not the kind of the building bit, but in terms of what you need to do when. And I do that with quite a lot of clients because they're like, I know I want to do this, but I just don't know where to start. And then if I go down this path, that changes all the decisions. So we can kind of, make it really simple, keep you accountable, to keep you on track with your project, that kind of thing. And then when it comes to then your build's happened, we can help unpack, make sure that every cupboard has a purpose, a function, because we'll have planned that up front. So we'll know exactly what's going in every cupboard. We'll have packed the boxes ready, knowing what cupboard it will be going in the new space that you've designed. And then you have a beautiful home that not only looks lovely, but every cupboard you open is easy, accessible. It's got your whole sort of routines mapped. So for instance, if you've got little children that you want to promote independence with, they'll be able to access, their cups and plates. But we'll have thought about, well, when they're 9 or 10, how might that change the kitchen? So it's, thinking from where you are now to where you're going to be in the future.
That's fantastic. And am I correct that you've got a network of people? So the area that you cover personally, but do you know if there's somewhere people can go if you're not in their area, where they could perhaps find someone to assist, maybe in Newcastle or somewhere?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I am an approved organiser of Dilly Carter, so I trained with her. And she's the lady from Sort Your Life Out. So the show with Stacey Solomon on TV, if you've seen it. And yes, on her website, there are other approved organisers as well. So if you like the show and you would feel more comfortable choosing an organiser, there's also an organisation called APDO, which I personally didn't choose to be a member of because I'm a member of Dilly. But there's lots of organisers on there as well. And I think when you're choosing an organiser, don't feel afraid to speak to more than one, because you want to connect with that person. So it's really important to me that we have a good connection and you feel like that you're comfortable with me being in your home.
And you understand, because as much as every family is different and you can have training, the way that someone addresses something, like with design, that it's a really intimate thing you're doing.
Exactly. And it's got to feel a right fit for you, because, we are in your home. We're often in very intimate spaces, and you've got to feel comfortable with that. And I would never take offence if someone said, you're not the right organiser for me, because it wouldn't then work. And, we do a consultation call, and both parties know very quickly if there's that spark there. So, and every organiser has different expertise as well. My expertise is working with busy families, got a lot of experience with neurodiversity as well. And I also have this design background. So if you're looking for really beautiful spaces at the end as well, then I can help with those things. But other organisers have different specialisms. So do your research, like everything you would do your research.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of add and share?
No, I think that's all. Unless there's anything you think I've forgotten.
No, not at all. I would love to have you back on at some time and discuss some of those more niche areas with you. If you could make time, that would be great. But
I'd love to. Well, thank you for having me.
That's okay. Thank you for joining us and listening to HIP, Your Home Improvement Podcast by Lima Kitchens. We hope you enjoyed the topics we discussed today. Feel free to hit like, share and subscribe to get details on further topics we will be discussing. If you have any topics you'd like us to address and talk about directly, please feel free to send them through. We'd love to hear from you.